Okay, cool. So just jumping into it here, we'll start off DXY. So basically, just sort of following up on that sort of drop down that we had yesterday, we were sort of expecting basically, as we've got it marked out here, this is where we thought the buyers were sort of going to be coming in. So obviously, you can see it's literally just come down here again, pretty much to the on the spot, pretty much a tenth of the cent of the top side of this zone. We saw the buyers step back in and have that little reaction, is obviously sort of pushed right back up to the top. So what we've sort of seen happen now, actually it's enough to sort of that say that we've locked in a lower high coming through this top area here. Obviously, this is where we expected buyers to have another shot. They've shot it back up here again. As of right now, seeing a little bit of this sort of coming through. So this is lower high. So it's again, it's not to sort of say that this whole move is a sort of failed breakout, but you're starting to see that little bit of a slowdown with whatever was driving this to get it to the breakout here to sort of see if we were going to be seeing some sort of massive run. This is on a 30 minute, so let's put it at least onto an hour here. So I'm on the road today, so I haven't got my normal sort of setup, so things aren't quite as smooth. But basically, as you can see here, we've got a lower high that has been sort of locked in here. This means that sort of obviously, the buyers have had a second chance to buy it at this level, to look for that sort of continuation move to the top side and that to push it past that 370 sort of resistance that we sort of seem to have sort of found. Let me just mark this out through this zone through here. So now that we've got this sort of first lower high coming in, really what you want to be doing is to test, are the buyers going to be at this level here again? Are we going to sort of see the same reaction that we saw yesterday? Because this is the sort of way that you're going to be working it. You're driving up here, you've found your resistance, you've come down, you've found your support. The test is to sort of see how strong this whole sort of move is. You're either going to get, higher high, which would give us continuation, move to the top side, this whole trend continuing. We get the double top, as if it had sort of come up, obviously, literally to the same sort of level and rejected back down. But a lower high shows that you haven't even got the buying strength as of right now to sort of continue up to retest those previous highs. So really now the test comes on the most previous lows, which is this pullback area here. Now we need to sort of test to see, are we going to see a bit of a triangle sort of forming along here where we've got the buyers continue to sort of step in at this same level each time? Or are we going to sort of get a break of this level where we sort of see that the buyers aren't there, and which we start to sort of come back down to the bottom side, and we can start to sort of drag out these levels and sort of see, potentially if we get a bit of a sort of a channel sort of forming down here, or as I said yesterday, do we sort of come back to retest the top side of this sort of major range that we sort of saw through last week? All right, so sorry about that. We've got this. So if that's the sort of broader sense of sort of what we're looking at with sort of DXY, if we look at this as a sort of just as it has opened up this morning, we had obviously had a little bit of a gap down. We've closed this straight away, and as you can see, we're breaking to the downside here. So generally with these things, as I said, most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, 9.5 out of 10 times, you'll see these gaps close within the session. If they leave the gap open, you can obviously assume that maybe later through, say, Europe or through sort of the US sessions, you see a bit of a counter rally and it'll come up and close it. If they close that gap early, I would say I would put it higher in the camp of a continuation in the direction of the gap, because they haven't sort of worried. It's not like they've dropped it down here. Let me do this. It's not like they've dropped it down. Sorry, don't have a normal setup here. No, it doesn't seem to be working. Anyway, regardless, it's not like they've sort of dropped it down, left the gap so you can go up for the counter rally to close the gap later on. Look, nothing's a guarantee with these things, but if you close the gap early, as I said, as you can see here, it's tried to hold it, and now it's sort of breaking to the downside here. So you can expect pretty much a continuation of this sort of sell-off move to the downside here. This is on a 4 hour here at the moment. If we jump onto the 4 hour, we can see that it's actually quite sort of quite oversold already. So, really the test comes down to this level here. We've seen the buyers are sitting around this zone. So we marked it out yesterday, and this is the lower zone where it came in, just tipped that bottom part there. If we get a 4 hour close, below 326, 325, but you want a sort of fairly decent sized close there. If you get a 4 hour close down here, so it's 11, so the next, you've got an hour and 20 to see a bit more of a sell off. That's pretty much for me confirmation that we're going to see a bit more of a continuation of a sell off to the downside there. And if you have a look at a couple of the other sort of corresponding things, we've got gold. Gold's obviously sort of coming back up off its lows here. So we had this little sort of falling resistance. I said it was the first level for it to get through. Now we're coming into this little horizontal area. So we can see that this little zone's through here. We'll go templates for the zone here. We can see that this was a bit of support through this point here. We can see there's also resistance on this way here. So now we're testing it to see are those sellers that were so keen to sell it down and hammer it down from this level, are they still there? So you could sort of almost see this can either sort of be rolling over a little bit, or you might just sort of see a bucket and absolutely just pop through here. Again, you know what I mean? These things are sort of predicated basically on what they're doing with the US dollar. If we see that continued sell down with the DXY, you're going to see this just go bang and pop up through the top area here. So if we can take out the previous wick, which is that sort of 2025, then we're sort of looking to move up around that 2030 test. And as I said in yesterday's video, 2030 to me is a bit of a sort of, okay, this is a breakout, sort of you know, the sell down is kind of done for now. Doesn't mean that we're necessarily going back up to the top or going to new highs. Doesn't necessarily mean that, but it just sort of means that sort of, you know, we're not going to see this continued meltdown to the bottom side. So if we pop this one up over here, this is really, as you can see, support, resistance, break through, back test, and all the way down. Now we're sort of coming back up through here. We just want to see, are we going to see a repeat of this kind of price action here? Are these sellers that pushed it down here with this retest, are they going to give it another shot here? Or is this going to pop through? I'm in the camp that I think it'll pop through. I think we've got a 2030 test coming up minimum, because I think DXY will continue down. I think that this was ultimately a bit of a sort of shakeout, which can be sort of a precursor for a larger move. But, you know, it's no point sort of getting ahead of ourselves. But as you can see, you know, this was our sort of thing. We can see it was respected a few times. It's on a 4 hour. You might be able to see it a little bit better on the 1 hour. But you can see that this line was respected a number of times. And as we broke through, little back test, and it's really sort of taken off since. So, you know, we'll see sort of how we go through the rest of the session. But this is where we marked out yesterday, 2030. That's the test, and that's really where you want to get above. Above that, you're looking at sort of 2042, where we can see that the sellers truly push it down here. This was around that time that we had that little bit of sort of US data out, I think the Empire State, where it really sort of drove up. It was like 12 bucks or so in like a few minutes. So, you know, there was a lot of volume sort of coming in around this area over here. So, yeah, at the moment it's grinding, it's moving up to the top side. I'd expect a little bit of a continuation with gold there. If we flip onto the Aussie, Aussie, this was where I said yesterday we had the, if you saw yesterday's videos, that these ones, they're called a high heel top, basically. And if you can imagine this, I'm like, it's a nice sort of great sort of drawing skills, as a bit of a shoe, and there's the heel. That's kind of what you're looking for. It's great sort of artistic ability here. But that's basically what it is. It's called a high heel top, and it can be, obviously this is on the bottom, so it can be a top, it can be, basically it's a reversal pattern where you've seen it come off the lows, a real shoot fast down, and then bought straight back up. Looks like a high heel. These can be great sort of reversal sort of patterns. And as you say, we're sort of, I mean, Aussie's under a lot of pressure, so it's not flying along, but it has shown that this was, at least for now, the temporary bottom. And this was off the back of that sort of employment data that we had yesterday, which was shocking. Like that was just sort of like, you know, basically in line with what they would be wanting for in terms of sort of like, you know, hey, look, we're not going to have more rate hikes because, you know, job market's already cooling off and they're already feeling the pinch. Well, if we put even more, that's just going to drive it closer towards recession kind of area. But, you know, even despite that incredibly bad Aussie data, we push back up on the top here. And even as sort of you saw a second ago, so if we have a look at the sort of comparison here, so I'll put it on two charts side by side. And as I keep saying, I'm well aware that Aussie isn't part of DXY, but it just is a broad sense. We saw this drive pretty much back up towards, so let me put the Aussie over here. As you sort of see with these two here, we'll put this one on All right, just back again, 1 sec, sorry. It always sort of throws me off, sort of not being on the sort of normal setup. But so look, we had the falling resistance, we had the high hill sort of bottom, top kind of thing, reversal pattern. We're seeing a little bit of a follow through here now, and even as we sort of speak in that, we saw the DXY US dollar has sort of like had its little gap, it's closed it. As it continues to push down, we're going to see this little push up here to the top side. I think honestly that sort of if we do get a continuation, the big test for me, as I've got it marked out over here, is 66.50. This will give us that falling resistance, which really we've been respecting, as you can see, sort of through the whole year. Put on the 4 hour, you might be able to see it a little bit better. So through the whole year, we've been seeing this falling resistance right from the sort of tops of the December highs. I think that sort of in line with basically the NFP lows. Can't remember which one this was, some sort of US data. Oh, no, that was US CPI lows. So you got two major lows here where the market bought it back up, and obviously unable to hold it. That's the major one. Like I imagine that you're going to see a lot of selling coming in at this point. I mean, we're still 70 points off here, but it's not unachievable, particularly if you get above that 66 handle. I think it's going to be a fairly straight shot back up to the top side there. But I think we're going to see a lot of selling here. If you can overcome this, well, then I'd call this a major sort of fake out, shake out move, and that'll be in line with DXY moving back down into its range, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, and basically you could be seeing a retest of the lows. Of course, this is a bit of forward thinking, but this is what we're sort of looking for at the moment. We're what are we at? We're at 60 points off the lows at the moment. First target, or first sort of real battle is going to be above that 66 handle. If we can get above that, then 66.50 is a major level that I want to sort of see what happens, or how the market sort of values things as we get into that point. Flip across, we've got copper. Copper again sort of held those little lower areas here, so it's enough to sort of say that we seem to be respecting this falling resistance here, because this has really sort of given us, going in and out a couple of cents or so, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reactions on this bottom sort of falling support. We've seen a fairly big push up here. Again, sort of it's so choppy coming through this area, but this is what I was saying. It was coming down quite a steep gradient. It's a lot more sort of volatile. Look how tight this sort of channel was. It's a lot wider with the swings here, but we are starting to see a little bit more of a change of the gradient. So it's not just sell, sell, sell. It's starting to find buys. Those dips and drops aren't coming as far each time. As you can see, buyers coming in here, they only got it a little bit lower each time. They're just showing a weakening and a sort of potential change of trend through here. Again, these things don't mean that we're sort of going straight back up the top over here. It's the first step is to sort of get rid of that sort of sell down, or that sell down pressure. This could very easily just come back up here, as we can see, just as much with the bottom side. It's respected this a number of times as well. So, back over this level over here, where we can see, this has obviously got the horizontal, where it was the last level of our sell down. It's been support through here. It held through support in this little middle area here. This is the zone for it to sort of get through as well. So back above 380, then I think we could start to see back up into this horizontal range over here. But again, there's a lot of sort of resistance, and you got to flip things around, because that move on DXY and US dollar was very strong. But if you look at risk as a whole in the whole market, you've got equity markets are still pushing forward. If it was a true sense of, okay, everybody's going risk off, you'd see equity markets fall as well. You may not have seen Aussie run with the risk. So, I mean, obviously that's why it got battered sort of more than the others. That sort of when the market was buying up US dollar, Aussie got exceptionally hammered, because, even with the risk on attitude, it wasn't being held up. But certainly, if it was a full sense of, okay, risk off, like say Ukraine kind of moments, these kind of things, or obviously the whole sort of COVID era and that. I'm not suggesting we're near anything like that, but as an example, you saw the equity markets bail out, you saw risk assets, Aussie bail out, you saw copper and these kind of things bail out. If you see it across a broad sense of a whole bunch of different instruments, then you can say, okay, yep, that's where the sentiment is. But the fact that people are still buying equities means there is some still risk on idea in the market. You've seen Asian markets have been hammered quite hard, but we're talking sort of NASDAQ, the S&P was got the, even the Nikkei and that is sort of breaking out to sort of, 30-year highs. People are willing to take on risk. So you just got to sort of see that sort of flow onto the rest of the market. And this again makes me sort of think why, US dollar is actually sort of going further down. It's a bit hard to sort of say it at the moment, just because you have seen BOC, BOE, and the Fed have all had uh, CPI prints go up. You've got the Yemen situation, which, if that sort of continues, not that it's as big or large, it's a part of the piece of the puzzle, but as that sort of progresses, and if it does slow down that heavy shipping lane through the Red Sea, the flow on effect with that, in theory, is inflation. Because excuse me. Yeah, because the flow on effect with that is that shipping cost, like instead of going through the Red Sea, they go around, you know, Africa or whatever it is. This adds, I think I heard 15% in terms of sort of like, petrol costs, pay prices for the crew and all these kind of things. So obviously then they need to pass that cost on, and that is what's going to add to the inflation side of things. So, that's definitely still something to sort of keep in mind that's sort of burning on in the background. But in terms of sort of like, are they going to get rate cuts and all this? It's still at the point where even if they come later, you're still looking at places like, RBA, who are even later than that, and that's the whole sort of point. And if I get across to this is the this is our sort of Aussie 10 minus the US 10 yields. We are sort of seeing it sort of through this little range here. If we see a break to the top side with this, then we're going to see Aussie continue to take up, because we have seen a little bit of a divergence with the two more recently. So anyway, I'll jump back onto the charts. Finally, I'll just sort of finish off with China, because I'll get this Aussie off the screen here. We are seeing this start to roll over a little bit as well. So again, look, this is breakout. You can't sort of deny this. This has broken out. So what we want to sort of see here is the fact that it's already overbought and seems to be tipping down a little bit. If it takes out these wicks, first test for this is to come back and really sort of test the top side of this range through here. So you could probably pretty much put this as your breakout point, because we saw the candles couldn't close up here, candles couldn't close there. So that's where you want to sort of see your first test coming back to that sort of 719 kind of level. If you see a bounce from here and takes out these highs here, that's confirmation, and we're going up to 727. That's basically how that's going to work. This is on the daily time frame. If we see a failure to sort of hold the sort of back test down here, which is what I'm still in the camp of, I think then we're going to see a push, quite a heavy push back to the downside here. Because the thing is, it's like if you get these rejections, which are quite heavy down here, that's one thing. But if you go for a breakout and the breakout fails, then that's when price really gets punished. Because that's sort of like basically it's sucked in a bunch of longs, it's hit a bunch of short stops, and basically you're just going to see that all that extra liquidity come in when it sort of comes back down to the bottom side here. So first step is to sort of take out these wicks at 720.7, and then sort of really the test, the back test of this channel here is where we're going to see whether this is actually going to be a real move or if this is just a bit of a fake out move. It's definitely looking like we're going to see a little bit of cooling into the end of the week, but as to sort of whether it's a true breakout or not, we're just going to have to sort of wait and see how that sort of plays out. All right, that's about it from me.